And so we're take my glasses off. We're on Sadi Dayan Amud Bet, and we're at a new sugya. We're talking about how to measure 60 in bittul. It's going to be very relevant for where we're going. Um, maybe Ori, you want to start us off with Amar Rabbi Chanina?
Yeah. Amar Rabbi Chanina, כשהן משערין ברוטב ובכיפה ובחתיכות ובקדרה. So when we measure the 60, what's the 60th and what's the large amount and what's the small amount? Misha'arin berotev, we account also the sauce, the residue, the pieces, and the pot. Ika da'amri bekadera
Wait,
atzma.
wait.
There are those.
Look at Rashi. Look at Rashi right away.
Yeah. Rashi. כשהן משערים, העשר בשישים, משערים אותו כשיהא בו אחד משישים ברוטב, בקיבו, בחתיכות ובקדרה.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
That's what
it's
it's.
interesting. First of all, it's interesting that he's already mentioning shishim here, right? Which we didn't explicitly say that in the Gemara. Misharin. We're measuring. I guess if you're measuring, you got to be measuring 60.
Well, my question was, is that what's the context of this statement? Is it this when we were above, uh we did talk about shishim, or is it this last little sugya that we skipped with salting?
No, I think it's just in general. In general, when we're talking about a pot with isser falling into it or something, or balua in the pot, I don't think we mentioned 60 before. You said that we mentioned 60.
We did
We were talking.
above on the top of the page, Jaleka kafela b'shishim.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When we don't have a kafil, non-Jew to taste it, that's where 60, enters the conversation.
So now he's going back to that subject. It's kind of like Gufa. It's kind of like a Gemara that would say Gufa and then analyze that statement. So I guess we think we're analyzing that statement of Shishim, and now we're saying, okay, how do you do it? And you do it with these things. Now, what is Kifa? Look at Rashi.
Kifa, Kifa, fundarila, dak shel basar v'tavlin hamitasef b'shulei akdera. So I translated as residues, like little fine, leftover residue of meat and spices, whatever is left over from your cooking, on the edges of the pot.
So Shule Hakedera, I always thought meant the edges of a pot. But in Gemara Shabbos and Daf Lamed Aleph, we talk about Heshchiru Panehen Kishule Hakedera. Their face was dark, like the shule of the Kedera. What part of the Kedera is dark? The bottom. So I think what he's actually kifa really means is like like if you put a lot of spices in a pot, maybe when you pour out the soup, there'll be like crumbs at the bottom of the pot. I
Mm.
think that's what kifa is.
Yeah, Rav Nachum, I've seen shule used both as like shule habeg at like the bottom of the something, but also the side sometimes. I don't know that
Oh yeah,
it's
shulayim normally means sides. That's what I thought, but I think here it means bottom.
We'll say
And you're
that could
I
apply well to both. The bottom is also one of the edges.
yeah.
It's just the bottom one.
just want to add is you often just don't want to know what's on the bottom of the pot. It's like all that stuff.
Right. I think here it means the bottom. There's because yeah, I think that's what it means. So we're adding. So what are we measuring against? The pieces,
All of that stuff,
everything in the
including
pot.
the
Even
pot.
though I guess it may be some kind of halamina that this is not really food, like Rabbi Landis is saying. Nobody wants to eat the bottom of the pot, so maybe you don't really count it, but you count it. Okay, go on. So ikadam.
Ikadamri b'kedera atzma. There are those who say this means the actual pot. The ikadamri b'mai debala kadera. And some say this means the what the pot has absorbed. which we might
Okay.
consider the flavor.
So this, we have to stop here for a minute. What is this
Mhm.
two possibilities? What is the difference between what the pot absorbed and Kedera Atzma? Ikadamre b'Kedera Atzma b'Kedamre b'Maydabala Kedera. So Rashi comes in on the second part, Maydabala Kedera. So read that Rashi.
Im ra'inuhu kishenafal sham kodem shenitma'et. If you saw something that fell in there before it was, I guess, boiled down, v'anan misha'arinoto la'achar shenitbashel. We're going to measure it after it was cooked.
Well, I think he's
L'kamut
saying like this, that
shenafal.
the moment that we come to measure is a later date. In other
Mhm.
words, we saw it at the initial moment that it fell in, and we know it was 1 kilo of Isser. And now we're coming to measure,
Mhm.
but it's been a while since it fell in.
Right.
V'anan
La'achar
misharinoto
shenitbashel l'kamut
la'achar
shenafal.
shenitbashel. And then we misharinoto l'kamot shenafalsha. What does that mean?
You're saying kamut, the amount that fell there. I guess are we comparing
Or
it?
l'kamot, it could be the kamut, it could be the kamot, like it was when it fell in. In other words, it's nitma'et. In other words, it's now, if you take out the piece, we realize, oh no, it's Isser, so we take it out. And we measure it, it's only 800 grams. So first of all, he's telling us a chumrah. We're going to measure it since at the moment of the initial interaction, it was a kilo. We can't just say it's only 800. We got to measure it like the moment of it falling in, because we know that it was a kilo at that time. If we didn't know, maybe the din would be different, but we know that it fell in. That's why he specified. We know that it fell in as a kilo. We know what size it was, and now we take it out, it's smaller. We have to measure it. We have to do our measuring versus the full kilo. The kamochina falsha.
So you're saying
That's
we don't measure it, we don't count it as what went in initially.
no,
Sorry, we do measure what went in. We don't measure it to what it reduced to.
exactly. That's what I think Rashi is saying. I don't know if you guys all read it like that. It's a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's hard for me to see it. I see that phrase "l'kamut shenafal sham." I guess that's what it's doing. It's doing that work. But
Right.
it's sort of avaminavan misharino to la'achar shenitbashel. We're just going to measure it to after it was.
No, you gotta read it all as one long sentence. Vana misharino to la'achar shnitbashel l'kamut shenafal shama.
In the
We
first place.
measure it after it cooked, like the size it was before it cooked.
Mhm.
Okay, go on.
Ve'en beheter shishimbo omdim
Or you remove
kama.
that bow according to Aleph, according to the
Okay.
ve'ein beheter
Beheter
shishim.
shishim.
And so we have a problem because we're saying it's
It was bigger.
full kilo, we don't have a heter now. We are being machmir sort of gave us the situation that we don't have 60 anymore. So go on.
Is this a case where we took it out or it cooked in there?
No, I think we took it out. We recognize it. We take it out. I think that's the case.
Well, wait, but are we saying that this is an explanation of um the phrase "b'mai de bala kadera"? Because then it makes me think that it did cook in there and that like the pot sort of swallowed up whatever got cooked down.
Yeah, well, Rashi's going to get there. He's a long walk. He's taking a very long walk to explain how we have a case of Maida Bala Hakadera. It's not just like, because you could have said lots of things. You could have said, I don't know, what the Kedera previously had absorbed, which is what Tosa is going to say. Or you could have said lots of things. But he's giving this whole case that our initial assumption is we're going to measure against the full size. But now we don't have 60. So he's building up to it. So go on.
Omdim kama bala kadera min haheter lefi kishenafal sham. So to measure the amount of heter,
Omdim
yeah,
means what? Not to measure.
It's I think estimate.
Yes.
We're estimating how much was how much the pot would have absorbed
Not would
from the
have,
heter,
not would
or how
have,
much it
did absorb.
likely absorbed, I guess, if it's an
Yeah, like
estimation.
the Omdim Kama Bala
Mhm.
Kedera Mina Heter.
The
So
Fikish
now we're
Nabal.
going to say, this is kind of like what Sarah was saying, that now we're going to say, well, the heter is also smaller, just like the Isser got smaller. The pot, we don't have 50, we don't have 60 in the pot against the original fault, but the pot also got smaller. The amount of soup reduced. So we make an estimate. Of course, some of it evaporated, but some of it didn't evaporate. It went into the walls of the pot. So omdim kama bala kedera mina heter. So some of that reduction actually went into the walls of the pot, and we say we estimate. We say maybe a half a kilo went into the wall, or
And that
whatever.
makes a lot more sense because when I took out the Isser, the heter was still there, and now it's reduced. So
But we took out
the
the heter,
heter has reduced
the
over the
heter,
cooking.
and hello.
We
Yeah,
lost you
you're
for
on.
half a second, Rav Nachum. So
Oh, you lost me.
yeah, at least I did.
Yeah, I don't know. The heter and the isser reduced. Good to be back.
Well, yes, but if you remove the Isser, then it's really the heter we've seen the bigger reduction over the
No, no.
time.
Well, when did you remove the isser? Did you remove the isser? I assumed you removed the
I thought
isser
it
and
was
you
right
immediately
away.
went to the rabbi. In other words, it fell in. You took a piece of meat and it was exactly a kilo and you put it into the pot. Then an hour later you realize, oh no, that was isser. So you go in and you
Okay.
fork it out, and now you take the pot to the rabbis and you say, well, how big is the isser that I took out? It's only 800. It was a full kilo. And then how much is the pot right now? I don't know how much it was when it fell in, but I know that it was a kilo that fell in. I don't know how much it was then, but I do know how much it is now. They both reduced because they were cooking.
Okay,
So
but when we say we're measuring kama bal aktera, what we mean
yeah,
is we're going to remember how much was in there and it started and estimate with
no, we
cooking
don't know how
down.
much was in there. We don't. No, we're just going to say it's now a certain level, but we're going to say to ourselves it probably was a higher level
I
earlier,
see.
and then
Right,
we're
right.
going to say we don't know how much it was. We're going to say let's assume that in the walls some of that initial extra volume seeped into the walls.
But wouldn't that ratio apply equally to the heter and
Oh,
the
wait, yeah,
Isser?
Rashi's gonna, yeah,
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
perhaps Rashi's gonna say that. But right
Haya
now
heter.
we're in the explanation of how the Gemara is thinking according to the Ikeda Amri.
Right. Haya heter harbe v'nitma'et b'bli'at haktera. So there was a lot of heter, but it's reduced in the absorption of the pot. Aval b'ktera atzma lo misharin. None.
So now he's
Importantly,
saying, but don't
this
have the
opinion.
Havamina that the Gemara is suggesting what?
Well, this, and according to the Sikadamre, we're not measuring the full size of the pot.
In other words, this is the other one. The my Dibala Hakadera, the other Ikeda Amri was the Kadera Atzma.
Yeah.
And Rashi is saying this opinion says just what is absorbed into the Kedera of a lo b'kedera atzma, of a b'kedera atzma lo misharim,
Right.
which would be a larger measure.
Yeah.
Because that would be the full size of the metal of the pot, not just the amount the pot could have absorbed. So the
Right.
other
I mean,
opinion says
that sheet that doesn't even really measure this whole conversation of what's absorbed of, what
exactly
you
according
assume
to that
is
sheet that you
absorbed.
don't have to have this whole case. I mean, it could be this case, but it could also be other cases. It could be any case where Isser fell in, you would just measure the walls, even if nothing reduced. That other opinion would say, even if nothing reduced at all, you just add up the metal of the pot.
Right.
And Rashi's saying that the opinion that says, no, you don't add the metal of the pot, so how is it that you have, so what do you measure? You measure what the pot absorbed from the heter. And the Isser, it went down by a certain amount, so you've already finished with that. But the heter went into the walls, and so you can add that. It's very clear, right? You get like an extra certain amount, let's say 50% of the volume of the metal. Or I don't know, 50%, 10%. Omdim yafe. You omed. You come up with an estimate. Now the Rashi is going to paskin. Now Rashi is paskin.
Bekevan de'ifligu lishne, the Isura Doraitahi, and because there was a disagreement language. Is that right?
Well,
The
if
Isura Doraitahi.
lishni,
Lishni.
what do you think that? What lishni? We just talked about two lishni.
Yeah,
Put a
the
comma
Damrit.
after the fligu, it helps. Kevin the fligu, lishni.
Oh, I see. You should. So because they argued, thank you.
Since there
Because
are
they
two,
argued, we'll learn the Isura Doraitahi, and it's also a
I would read it like
Doraita.
this. Okay, since there are two different versions of how to understand this,
Yeah.
lishni is like versions. Since there are disputed versions about what the halacha is, and the Isser Doraita, and since it's an Isser Doraita, we know whenever there's a machloket Isser Doraita, you go l'chumra. Whenever there's a machloket Isser Dorabanan, you go l'kula. So Rashi
Yeah.
says, Kaven the
Clean of the
iflugu
chumrah.
lishne, since there's two different languages, two different
Yeah.
versions of how to understand what the halacha should be, the Isser Doraita he, azlina l'chumra, we paskin l'chumra, v'lo misharin and b'kedera atzma. And we don't measure the Kedera only, the whole Kedera. We just have this heter where we're being machmir because we said we knew that it fell in at a larger size than it is now. And then we have this extra permission to add the walls and get another few centiliters of liquid. That's what he says is the Iker Halah. No, that's what he says is how we should paskin. And now he paskins it more practically. He says, you know what? I'm going to give you a more practical way to paskin. Go on, the Iker.
Ve'ikar hadavar kamut shehu ba lefanenu misha'arin le. So, the essential thing is that the amount that is right here before us, we measure. V'lo misha'arin an demai debala kedera min haheter. And we're not going to measure what we assume the walls of the pot absorb from the heter substance. Lefi she'af min ha'isur nivla, because of also the isur substance when it was absorbed. The nitma'et mikamut shehi. Mitma'et mikamut shehaya. The isur absorb is also smaller than what it was. So it's in whatever heter went into the walls, the isur also went into the walls, so that it's their ratio has stayed the same between isur and heter.
Mm-hmm. So,
okay.
So what is he saying you're going to do in my case of the 80 and the 100? What are you going to do? The 80 and the kilo. 800 and the kilo.
What's the ratio again?
Let's say you knew that it fell in at 1 kilo, and now the piece is only 800. What is Rashi telling you to do?
The Isser was 1 kilo?
Isser was 1 kilo, and now it is only 800. What should you do according to this?
Well, what's the rest of the sauce?
X. It's X. Some amount.
I just don't know if I have.
I'm not saying. Well, I'm not asking you to paskin. I'm asking you what should the evaluation be.
It's going to be the initial ratio, not the reduced ratio. We're just going to discount the reduced ratio in this case, no?
Oh, you don't know what the original amount was. Rashi said how it comes in front of us. We don't try to backward and analyze history and say, well, what happened an hour ago and what was the size? We just say we are dayanim. Things came in front of us. We analyze it as we see it before us, and therefore we have 8. We just analyze 800, not a full kilo, 800 grams versus whatever's in the pot now, and then you'll say. And then Rashi has like sort of a kasha on himself. He says,
in the Kaman, Atu de
maybe. Where are you reading?
The last bit of Rashi.
Right. Right. That's his proof text. That's his proof
Okay.
text for his permission to do this. But he had a kasha, right? He had a kasha on himself. What was the kasha? Sort of an unstated kasha.
I guess I don't understand it completely, but the Isser has also gone down and also been absorbed into the walls.
Right, that's his answer. But his kasha would have been, his unstated kasha was, why don't we have permission to use the walls? Why should we just measure that's in front of us? Let's also add the walls in. Let's add something that absorbed into the walls. And he says, and get even more of a heter. And he says, no, you can't do that because also the Isser went in at the same ratio.
Right.
So you can't go try to be even more makel than that. You just view it at the current state, and we assume that whatever went into the walls is in the exact same ratio as what we have in front of us. And therefore, it has no effect on changing the ratios. It doesn't change the ratio because it's the same ratio.
But he's discounting what's the Gemara's intention in that case. The Gemara, the Ikeda Amre, that this is like he's basically saying
he's
nothing
totally,
for heter here.
Rashi is saying this whole Ikeda Amre, these two lishnas, throw them all away. I have a different method for you to do it. And that is as it comes in front of us. Don't measure the wall. I certainly don't measure the pot itself, because that would be a big of a kula.
Right.
Yeah, Noam.
I was just going to say, it seems like he's paskening against Rebbe Chanina, because there's no plausible way of understanding what Rebbe Chanina means by the Kedera.
That's what I was going to ask, is what does he mean?
Neither the Blia nor the Kedera Atzma. So
why do you say against Rebbe Chanina? Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean against the whole statement? Because
I assume you would agree with part of the statement, but the statement that mentions the Kedera, Rashi saying there's nothing about the Kedera that you're going to count towards.
I don't think he's rejecting it as an illegitimate method. He says, when he says Iker Davar, he's saying, I think what he's saying is this is the best method for practically handling cases. But he's not saying that, he's not arguing. He doesn't say he's wrong. He just said, and he didn't say we have to paskin differently because of a logical reason. He didn't give a logical reason why you have to do this. He's just saying this is this is Iker Hadavar. This is the way to do it. He didn't say.
You just say, Nachum, you have to hear this from me. You're so right. If they had the Association of Orthodox Jewish Scientists who would study pots and figure that out, then maybe he'd come back. But we're paskening. We're not, as you said, we're not doing pilpulim, and we're not doing scientific studies.
Exactly. But I'm also pointing out that he's not rejecting necessarily Rabbi
No,
Chanina.
it doesn't reject it. It's
just saying I have a better way of thinking about it. We're going to find this when we learn Hilchot, whenever you have a practical case of is this pot kosher? There's always different ways to analyze it, and you can come up with different dinim. So he's just saying, I have a different way to analyze. Okay, now Tosfos has a different way of looking at this. Sarah, as long as you're here, you want to read the Tosfot, or are you? I know you probably gave birth and you didn't have much time to prepare.
I'm very minimally prepared. I'm happy to sight read. I don't know how it'll go, but
okay, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So Ikeda Amri?
Yeah.
Okay. Ikeda Amri b'kedera atzma. Tema. Im shiur ove hakdera k'chamishim zetim v'natan ba mayim k'shiur 10 zetim ubashal be'otan hamayim k'zait chelev heach yitbatel oto k'zait chelev b'mayim.
Right. Hapshita, go a little more.
Okay. Hapshita sheyesh b'mayim tam chelev. Okay.
Period.
So
what's his case? Paint me the case.
Okay. So his case is you have a Kedera that is 50 olives thick, and you put 10 zaitim worth of water in it, and then in that water, you cook a kazait of chaylev.
Right.
So
A normal person would look at it and say it's one chaylev versus 10 water, and obviously you're going to taste the chaylev in it. Ah, but you want to add the pot, and the pot is a huge, giant, thick pot. I don't know, it's very thick, and it's got 50 more zaytim. So you say, I have 50 more. 50 plus 10 is 60, and it's all batel. And he says this is like totally insane to try to say such a thing. Those are saying it's not realistic. So
right.
how are you telling me to measure against the pot itself?
Okay. V'nireh lefaresh dahachamayre kagon delete leisora be'ene denivla ba b'kedera kazait chaylev. V'hi hayta kvar blua meheter. ואחר כך חזר ובשל היתר למשארין בקדרה עצמה לבטל האיסור שנבלע בה. So we're not talking about you're cooking the chaylev in the water. It already happened. There already was chaylev that was absorbed into the pot for some reason, and then you're cooking the water in the pot. And we're saying, like, not if you do it at the same time, but if it's already been absorbed into the pot, you have the thickness of the pot, plus you have the water, you can add those things together and say it's batal b'shishin.
And also the pot had heter in it too.
Right, the pot had heter too. Right.
The pot had heter absorbed into it and isser absorbed into it. And now you just came along and like cooked up some tea, some hot, water in this pot. Now we're giving you the permission, since the isser is also absorbed in the pot, so it's not really here. So we'll let you, if we're going to count the isser to cause trouble, we'll also let you count the heter that's in the walls of the pot to cause good. So Rashi, I mean, whatever. He disagrees with Rashi, right? Kind of seems to be. Is this disagreeing with Rashi? Could you fit this with Rashi?
Yeah, interesting.
Rashi, right? Rashi didn't.
Kind of throws out the whole idea that you care about the Kedera Atzma, just saying like, forget it, we have to be more machmir, so we're not.
Right, he's not going to paskin like that, right? Right, but I guess Tosfos is saying even if we don't paskin like that, according to that opinion, he doesn't make any sense, because how could he even have thought such a thing? And then you have to say that Tosfos is explaining an opinion that we don't hold like, because we don't count the iked amre b'kedera atzma is his first words. And we're not going to do that. We're going to be more machmir. So then my question is, why not? It sounds he gave a very nice explanation. Why not? In other words, it comes out the halacha seems that we're not going to, in such a case where you had isser and heter in the walls, you can't do that. You can just view the, well, mashabala kedera. I mean, that's kedera. That's called the kedera atzma. A little bit hard to understand what would be kedera, mashabala kedera. If that's kedera atzma, he's talking about bala. Joel, you can help me out?
I had that problem. Here's my solution, but I don't know if I love it. But is that Kedera Atzma means you assume that the entire volume of the pot, not the pot's walls, not the volume of the internal pot, but the volume of the pot's walls was all blew out with heter, right? And then bala, right, this Beitza worth of, was the Beitza worth? I can't remember. Zayit worth of Isser. And so then you can say, since it was a 50 Zaytim thickness wall pot, that it would be 50 heter absorbed in there and 1 Isser. But the second opinion, the Lishna Achrina, would be something like, you actually have to know how much was absorbed in there, right? You have to have like some history to it that you know, and you can't just assume the entire pot is blua kind of thing.
In other words, you're saying their argument, when one says Kedera Atzma, he means assume that it's fully absorbed. And the other one says, no, you can't assume that. You have to know exactly how much heter is in there.
Yeah.
All right, that's the best. That's the best answer I've heard.
Rav Landis doesn't like it.
Rabbi Landis
I would
like
just add, is we keep on talking about our pots. They had whatever they had, and the material reality for them was such you could really think about absorption into those pots. whatever clay mixture it had did not necessarily have a glaze on it. You can just see it. And then if you're cooking every day, in that, it feels like it belongs in one area or another area, or if you're cooking both together, it seems like it is Balua. For us, it's harder. For us, it's harder even to figure that out. That's all I want to say.
Right. They had certainly pots that were like probably raw iron that absorbed more. Okay. So we thrashed that out pretty well. Let's continue on in the Gemara. Maybe Josie, you want to read more in the Gemara?
Sure. So we're picking up at Amar Rabbi Abahu, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Excuse me. Amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Isirin Shabbatorah Misha'arinan Ki'ilu Hein Batzel Ukefilot.
Right? Kiflot.
Kiflot. So, Rabbi Abahu quotes Rabbi Yochanan saying all of the Isirin B'Torah are measured as if they were onions or not leeks. Leeks?
Yeah, leeks. I think leeks. I would go with leeks.
Right. So these very strongly tasting vegetables.
Go on a little bit.
Amarle Rabbi Abba Lebaye Ulisha'arin hu bepilpalin v'tavlin defila be'elef lo betilin. So we have a response here from Rabbi Abba to Abaye saying, and we should measure it like peppers and spices that even 1 in 1,000 you wouldn't be mavatal. You still taste them because they're so strong. So
right. In other words, you picked batzal presumably because it was strong. Because you're saying I want to be. Nothing is worse than batzal. He says, well, why stop there? Go to pilpil. So
Amarle. Okay, so the response here, Amarle Shiro Hachamim de'en noten ta'am bisurin yoter mibatzel the kiflot. It says so. We have this. We have a statement from the Hachamim that that it doesn't get worse than I'm not exactly sure how this is. The ein noten ta'am is bisurin that isurin are tasted no more strongly than onions and leeks.
well,
So if
okay,
you had
good translation. Yeah, good.
If you had a
In other words,
volume
that's it. You don't have to worry about pilpilin. Shrimps, the most pungent foods, they are about like onions. They're not worse than onions. If they had shrimps back then. Okay. Now, first of all, I have a couple things to point out. He says shiru chachamim. I don't know if you remember, we learned a Rashi last time that he says call shirin halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Here the Gemara says shiru and therefore he says therefore that's the gira nashe. Gira nashe is what? What was gira nashe? Gira nashe was basar belefet. Also not 60. It was basar belefet. It was like meat and lefet. Okay, that he says. Rashi says halacha l'Moshe Sinai. God told Moshe Rabbeinu, that's how you measure gira nashe. Basar belefet. But now here, by all the other Isurim, when it says you should use onions as that is shiru chachamim. The chachamim decided. So it's a bit strange to me. It's a bit irks me. I don't have an answer. Just a bit strange. Rabbi Landis.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, this keeps me up nights also, but basically, at least 2 nights ago. But I think basically the principle is a derisa principle that, the principle of taste and penetration. That's the derisa principle. And then Shiru Chachamim is, as it were, was handed over to Chachamim because you have to have Shiurim. And so, once they do so, therefore the Gezerah is the amount is a drabanan in terms of it being the shire, but it's a kiyum midiraisa. It's fulfilling a deraisa idea. It can't be totally nebulous. It has to be somewhere in that direction. Anyway,
Right, but what about over there? What about over there by Gid?
yeah.
Why did they go into such detail? Why did God go into such detail over there?
Yeah, because only thing I can say is that Gede has special attention, like certain other. There's like three things that have special attention, and Gede has special attention. It's in the Genesis narrative.
Okay, okay, you got me.
I made up that. I
You
made up that.
persuaded me.
I made up that.
Josie, you have a comment.
It sounds like this isn't meant to be put in opposition, but in apposition to what we've been talking about previously. We now are getting, the Hachamim are giving us a practical measure for something. If maybe it's difficult to figure out 60 parts of volume to 1 part of volume, but you might have like, oh, if this, I know how much onion I need to flavor my soup, and if I have a piece that's bigger than this onion, then I have it's not 60 is what it is, and here's something that's good enough to get you there.
Okay, wait, Ori.
I think also the context is the challenge to this idea is and take a spicier thing, and they're saying, well, the level of chumrah the rabbis are giving, like I would say maybe the rabbis amount here is like a geder to basar balefet. So maybe basar balefet is Moshe Misina, but I would think a onion is a little bit more strict. Assuming that every Isser gives taste like an onion, it's a little bit more strict, and then it is their job to
Right,
sort
you
of
could
give
say,
us
I think
that.
what you're sort of implying is like this. Really, this is an answer actually I thought of, but I forgot. And now you said this, I remember it. Which is really God gave lots and lots of measurements. He gave all kinds of measurements for all kinds of Isurim to Moshe Rabbeinu. But when Moshe Rabbeinu died, was it 33,000 halachas were forgotten? And these were forgotten. We don't know anymore what they are. And that we have that one. So here the rabbis had to come in and come up with the most strict. But really there were such other
Not
ones.
the most strict, but a reasonably strict.
A reasonably strict one. Wait, I think Noam, who's with you?
Hey, Don.
Never mind. What I was going to say was
What? I didn't hear you.
I said what I was going to say was said.
Okay. Rabbi Joel.
I was wondering if right, Gede has no flavor, right? So the Gede, we need a Torah Moshe Sinai for the Gede, okay? Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell, right? Here it's like kind of like Rav Lannis was saying, there is a Metzias you could actually figure out. So if Hashem just says you can't taste the flavor,
Yeah,
okay.
but remember the Gid has no flavor. No, but I think there's a Rashi that says that over there the sugi is according to the one that says Gid does have a flavor. Because if Gid wouldn't have a flavor, then it would be batil, and we wouldn't need to use that measure. Problem I think with Gid is that even though it gives a flavor, it's the same flavor as the meat. I don't know. It's a possible answer you're saying. Okay. Josie, can you read the Rashi Kol Isurim Shabbatorah?
Sure, let me just unmute myself. Levad Gida Nashe Dikavasar Belefet.
Right.
So
he says all Isurim except for Gid Nashe, because that one we already said in the previous page that is Basar Belefet. Okay, now we still have to understand what is this thing Misharin with Ki'ilu Hen Batzal the Kiflot. How do we do that? So that's the next Rashi.
Misharinan Otam Ki'ilu Hasir Batzal O Kiflot the Ilu of Kiflot the Ilu Haya Noten Ta'am Beheter Zeh Shnipashel Imo Osro. So this is
Okay.
I mentioned earlier that this much onion in something permitted would give it flavor.
Wait,
and
not something permitted. What does it say? Read it again very carefully.
Ilu haya notitam beheter zeh.
Beheter zeh shenitbashel imo osra. What does that mean?
I'm not sure what distinction you're trying to make here.
Well, when I take this batzal and I say, would batzal give flavor? And my question now is, in what? Let's say, so Caleb, what is?
So I would say that what's being said is if I took onion and if instead of my chalev in whatever it fell into, I dropped an onion into whatever it fell into, meat soup or whatever.
Exactly. This is a subtle point that is not. It could be overlooked very easily. But that's what Rashi's saying. That it's therefore is this a measurement like 60, like 1 in 60, or is this a relative measurement?
This is, I mean, it's not a volume measure. It's sort of a practical measure. If I drop the onion in the meat soup and I would taste the onion,
Right.
then
So if if that same Isser fell into milk, it might be different. Might be different. Now, it's not a uniform measurement. In other words, I have to evaluate the particular thing that the onion is falling into. My Isser fell into rice. So now, would onion be flavored in the rice? Now my Isser fell into, salsa. Would my onion be, whatever, different things have different ratios that onions will be perceived in. So I'm just pointing out that we're not yet at the concept of 1 in 60. Or in other words, 1 in 60 is a fixed measure. Ari?
So if I have an onion soup, you think it might be more mako?
Exactly. So what about an onion soup? That's exactly the question you have to ask. What about onion soup? So can anybody give an answer? What would you do about onion soup?
leeks.
Oh, the leeks. That's my thought is that perhaps that's why it gives 2. Why does it say onions and leeks? Choose. Just tell me onions. I'm imagining this thing. Don't tell me, well, maybe you don't have any onions at hand. Well, I'm not actually going to boil up rice and put onions in it and see. I sort of imagining it. So I mean, maybe I am actually doing it, but maybe that's for the leeks is for the case where you have onion soup. And now you have to say the Isser is like leeks.
I don't think that's right. I'm being facetious a little bit because I think
Well, yeah,
really
it's a
the
clever
amount.
answer. I don't know if it's right, but it's a clever answer.
No, right, exactly. But I think that's not what the Gemara means. I think what it means is the amount that you expect onion to give in any case. It is an amount.
No,
I
that's
think
exactly
it
what
can
I'm
be
going. That's what
applied.
Rashi, but Rashi goes to great
Yeah.
pain to say that's not what you're supposed to do. Look at Rashi again. He
No, I
says,
understood what you were
"Ilu
saying.
hayan
That's a
noten."
very
You're
softer
saying
reading.
you're saying the Gemara as opposed to Rashi. You're right.
No, I just
The
think
Gemara
Rashi's
might
reading
be
is the
saying,
amount onion would give is something that we can imagine. We're not measuring an onion to compare with our piece of
yeah,
meat,
but the point is, if
of
I'm
milk.
boiling up milk, onion might be better flavor, might be perceived in a smaller quantity in milk than it would in meat soup or in something else.
Yeah,
The Rashi
maybe. I
says,
think he just means
"Beheter
imagine an
desh and
onion
it
giving
bashel
flavor.
imo osro." If it would give flavor, beheter zeh. If it would give flavor in that particular heter, it doesn't say bekamut heter kazeh. He says beheter zeh. That's the way I'm understanding it. And I think Rashi's trying to say, because Rashi said all along that, 60 is a later development. And even though we mentioned it at the top of the page, we're sort of at an earlier time here. I mean, I'd have to think about it more. I have to check out the rabbis and when they lived exactly. But I don't remember when this rabbi lived. Anyway, Josie, you want to read on? Just finish the Rashi. Ubahach Isura.
Ubahach Isure de lo matze lemit aminhu ka'amar kagon min umino. So and this type and this or these types of isurim that we can't be tasting, right? Like min mimino, like you can't taste onions and onion soup, for example. The inami she'eno minodi isura veleko kfela, and in any case,
What is inami?
well, or otherwise.
No, we translated how we translated last week. Alternatively,
Alternatively,
in other words, in another circumstance, an equal and parallel circumstance.
alternatively, in the she'eno mino case with an isur and you don't have someone to taste it, the akati lo ifsi kilchata b'shishim. In any case, we this is lo ifsi kilchata b'shishim. We were not poskening the law by shishim. Is that?
Akati is still. We still haven't paskin the halacha b'shishim.
Right.
In other words, we're at an earlier time where we haven't yet established shishim as our modus operandi, as our general method.
This is Rashi is like the color commentator here, in telling us, how the game is being played. And the game's being played is, can we use Tom? Can we use Tom? Can we use them, not just Tom, can we use analogical reasoning? Term I used in the first year. Can we use it? And it doesn't work. This is, how the paradigm shifts. It's not, it's like, it's so hard to make it happen. It's excruciating. That's all.
As Rashi is saying, this imagination effort that we're doing is only in a case where you don't have a way of tasting it, but better taste it, or we haven't yet established.
Tasting is still the original,
right?
Original deal. Every Jew got a shul sometime. Every Jew knows about batel b'shishim, except if you say to a Jew, well, have your handyman taste it. They'd be a little shocked.
Mm-hmm.
They would be shocked.
All right, Josie, read one more Rashi here.
Pilpulin notin ta'am be'elef kimotan.
No, shiru chachamim. Oh, pilpulin. Sorry, two more Rashis. Pilpulin, yeah.
Shiru hachamim ein b'surin notin ta'am yoter mibatzel bekiflot. So you don't have to get any more severe in notain tam than onions or leeks.
Right. Okay. So that's like the strictest measure. Noam, you want to read the Tosfot Kol Isurin Shabbatorah?
Sure. Kol Isurin Shabbatorah Mesharinan Otan Ki'ilu and Batzel Kaflot. So there's Rabbi Yochanan Statement, all the Isurim in the Torah, we measure them as if they're onions or leeks. Midelo nakat kebasar belefet kedekatani b'manitin gabe gid hanashe mashma de'en shi'uran shaveh degid delo yahiv tama kulei hu demasharinan kebasar belefet aval shar isurim de yahave tam tfei mesharinan bebatzel vekaflot. So from the fact that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't mention meat in turnip, like it says in the Mishnah regarding the Gita Nasha, we learn that the measurement of these other Isurim is not equivalent to that of the Gid, because the Gid does not give off so much flavor.
The Gid gives off flavor. The sugi over there is that Gid does have flavor, but it's not as much.
Yeah, it doesn't give off.
And therefore, we have a more lenient way of measuring it.
Meaning, we liken the gid to basar, to meat, which also gives off some flavor, but just not so much.
Not as much as onions.
Correct. And the other isurim, which give off far more flavor, we liken them to onions or to leeks.
Notice it, by the way, in Tosfot, it's like he had a different gear. So he says, sorry, no, never mind. Take it back. Reading the wrong line. Okay, so he's saying there's two different shirim here. We have two different shirim, and the shir by Gid is a more lenient shiur, sort of. It's less strong. It's, let's say, if this is equivalent to 1 in 60, then what's the Gid one?
No, the Gid, well, I think the rest of the toast is going to be relevant to that.
Yeah,
But I think the
yeah.
Gid is relevant to 1 in 60, and then we could imagine the other.
Well,
maybe
right.
it's
So go ahead. So
medium
keep
or
reading.
Okay. The Midamar Rav Nachman Gid B'Shishim Mashma de Basar Belefet Ahava Shiura B'Shishim ולפי זה פליג רבי יוחנן עד רבא דלאל דאמר כל איסורין שבתורה בשישים. Okay, so Rav Nachman is about to say in our Gemara that the Gid is in 60, and then that means that Basar Belefet, that food analogy, is like
It's also 60, because we're not going to create a machloket between Rav Nachman and the previous Gemara. We don't, right? We're going to say he agrees with the previous Gemara.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, he agrees with the Mishnah, actually. He's accountable to the Mishnah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Vilafiza and Rebbe Yochanan, who he brought up Batzel v'kaflot, he's disagreeing with Rava, who said Kol Isurin she Batorah b'shishim. So meaning now, the way the Tosfot, if I'm understanding correctly, is reading Rebbe Yochanan, is that when he said, but the same way that Basar Belefet is 1 in 60, Batzel v'kaflot is going to be some bigger shiur, meaning it'd be 1 in 80 or 1 in 100 or something
Right.
like that.
Be more strict. Be more strict.
And that's disagreeing with Rava,
Right.
who told us that 1 in 60 is universal for all Isurim. Is that right?
Wait, say that again. Disagrees with
Rava, who they're
right.
understanding, telling us that 1 in 60 is the measurement for all Isurim.
Right. So this is a little bit different from Rashi. Rashi said there was a historical progression. He's looking at history in a flat way. History is flat. They're all together. And therefore, if Rava said everything is B'shishim, he must be saying that everything is the same as Gida Nashe. And Gida Nashe is B'shishim, right? It says everything is the same as Gida Nashe. And therefore, the measurement, if we would have had a measurement, if we would do a mind analogy, the measurement would be Basar Belefet. And therefore, this idea of onions is not in the ballpark, is a different opinion. It's not like what we would generally hold, not like Shishim.
Yeah.
And therefore he rejects this opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, it's also different from Rashi in a different way, where Rashi said, Kol Isurin Shabbat Torah in Rabbi Yochanan's statement, Levad Gid Hanashe, right? It understood Rabbi Yochanan not talking about Gid Hanashe, but this Tosfot is saying Rabbi Yochanan Davka was talking about Gid Hanashe and is disagreeing with Rava.
I think the issue is that Rava, right, is saying that Kol Isarin Shabbatorah are Shishim, and Rabbi Yochanan is saying that this is Kol Isarin Shabbatorah. Maybe Chutz Megiddah Nashe, right? Maybe Rabbi Yochanan thinks that Giddah Nashe is not like Batzal v'Kaflot, right? But if he says all other Isurim are like Batzal v'Kaflot, and Rav Nachman says that the Giddah Nashe is 1 in 60, right? And that's equivalent to the Basar Belefet. And Batzal v'Kaflot has to be something higher, which means that Kol Yisurin Shabbatorah, the other ones, have to be higher. Did that make sense?
Yeah. You're saying the other, right? It's not exhaustive. All those other Isurim.
According
to the is different. Of course,
Rabbi Yochanan could say Gid is 1 in 60, right? He could agree with Rav Nachman and be like, yeah, Gid is Basar Belefet, which is 1 in 60. It's just that everything else is more.
Right.
Okay.
So then he agrees with that Rashi in particular. That Tosfos could accept that Rashi. Right. Now read we didn't quite finish the Tosfot.
The Vikirava Kaimalan Tehubatra. And it does the same with Paskin like Rava, who's the latest of these Amoraim. Veken Paskinan Beperik Batra the Masechet Avodah Zarah Gabe Achbara Beshichra. And the Tosfots, there's proof for Paskining like Rava in the final parak of Avodah Zarah regarding some case of a mouse falling into beer.
Into beer, yeah. So what's the conclusion of this Tosfos? I mean, the conclusion is ultimately that we do hold like 1 in 60, but also that this Rav Yochanan statement is too strict, is stricter than that, and therefore we don't go by onions. We go more like basar belefet.
For Ali Surim, right?
For Isurim in general.
Yeah.
We're going to see later in other Gemaras that talk about pilpelin, like we said, pilpel is stronger. That if you had pilpel, let's say that was asur because it's avodah zarah or something, it might be not batel in 60. Okay, so again, we've seen. Probably just pointing out this interesting. We're trying to grapple with the difference between Yid Hanashe and the measurement there and the measurement here. And Rashi's approach was that there's development. And Tosafos' approach is that there's an argument, right? There's an argument between the rabbis. It's not a development. I think we'll take a break right now for 5 minutes. We'll come back. So now we are continuing the Gemara actually it was a good place to stop because it's kind of a new sugya. It's about Gid. Mostly it's about Gid. Sorry, Kachal. It's about Kachal. Sorry, but Kachal. Kachal being the udder of the cow. And where does it start? Amar Rav Nachman. Gid. It starts with Gid, but then it's going to go to Kachal. So, wait, no, thank you, Eitan. Eitan, you want to read for us?
Sure. Amar Rav Nachman, Gid b'shishim ve'ein gid min aminyan. Kacha b'shishim u'kacha min aminyan. Beitza b'shishim ve'ein beitza min aminyan. So Rav Nachman says that the Gid HaNashe is batel in 60, but you don't count the Gid when you're counting the 60. An udder is batel in 60, and you do count the udder when you're counting the 60 you're measuring it against. And eggs are also batel in 60, but you don't count the egg when you're counting the 60.
Right. Very good. Now, you got just for foreshadowing, later the Gemara is going to actually say eggs are 61, but here it's saying the eggs are in 60. Just pointing that out because it's interesting. What does it mean 60 also? Perhaps I can just offer perhaps it means in 60 of something else, not in 60 eggs, but like a non-kosher egg in 60 of, you put an egg in your cake and it's the rest of the cake is 60 and the egg is only 1. So it might mean that. As opposed to later in the Gemara, we're talking about 61 being the requirement. It's talking about eggs in eggs. I think that's the easy solution for that question. But let's look at Rashi. Ein gid min aminyan.
Ve'ein gid min aminyan, deba'ina in shishim deheter levad minei. Aval kachal, ho'il umin heter hu im nit bashel ima basar misharinan le b'shishim lebahade didei. And the gid is not, you don't count the gid with the 60 because we need 60 of heter other than the gid itself, which is not heter, which is asur. But the udder, since it actually is like kind of heter, if it's cooked with other meat, we count the udder with the 60 that it's cooked with everything that it's cooked with everything else.
Levadei didei, with it included, with the udder included.
Including it, yeah.
So you sort of hedged there. You said it's sort of heter. Is it what is it heter? Is it or can anybody else offer an explanation of is it heter or not?
Well, it's complicated, but it seems like its meat might be heter, but because it carries milk in it, sort of by its nature, it actually is asur to eat, even though like its basar itself might be heter.
So did you look at the Rambam? What's the actual what? Yes, I agree with you. You're saying it's 100% correct, but before we get to the Rambam, let me just ask a different question. Is there a difference between Torah and rabbinic law in the case of the kachal? So Max, what do you say?
You said not to go to the Rambam, but the kachal is
just basically, yeah, but without getting into the details of the Rambam, just yeah.
The kachal is only midivrei sofrim, and
why is kachal only asur d'Rabbanan? Why is it asur at all?
I think it's well.
Why is it really mutter? Why is it really mutter? Let's say like that. Why is it mutter d'oraita?
Well, I think part of it is the chalav shchuta piece that if the milk connected to an animal that was shechted.
All right, you know what? Let's look at the Rambam. Let's open the Rambam.
Could you start by outlining the case, though? Because I think this case is very different than the others in the list.
Yeah, what is the case? Kachal min minyan of what?
In a case of basar v'chalav, right? Are we counting it as part of the basar?
No. The Tosfos is going to say eventually that we're talking about kachal being cooked with other meat.
Right.
Not basar v'chal. It's not in halav. It's in meat. Maybe that's what you meant. We have a whole pot of meat,
yes,
and one of the pieces of meat is a udder.
But what's the davar iser in that case? Is what I'm asking.
Well, so look at this Rambam in Hilchot Malachot Asurot, Perek Tet, Halacha Yud Bet. Was what I gave you in the email. Everyone got my email, yeah? Yeah, wasn't stuck in my outbox. So Max, you want to read for us?
Sure. Hakchal asur min divrei sofrim, she'ein basar shenizbashal b'chalav shchuta asur min haTorah k'mo shebe'arnu.
Okay, so wait, stop there. That's the
Yeah.
answer that I wanted, which is what?
Right. So the kachal is only asur d'Rabbanan, and since if you cook meat with milk from an animal that was shechted, that's not asur min haTorah, and that's what this case is.
It's not milk and meat. In other words, once you shecht an animal, every part of that animal is fleshing. There's no milk is only when you milked a live animal and you collected the milk. But any milk that you find in the udder of a shechted animal is fleshing. It's a whole animal is all meat. There's nothing else but meat there.
You want to say something about divrei sofrim?
Yeah, what about divrei sofrim? So we didn't explain why it's asur divrei sofrim.
And what is divrei sofrim?
Well, there's a whole book on what is divrei sofrim in the Rambam, but
it's not just like another drabanan, right?
So you tell me.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I think divrei sofrim, boy, it encroaches on dioraisa. That's what I think it means.
Okay, but here it's not like when he says divrei. He does say kesef kedushin is divrei sofrim,
right?
And there it's deraita, but he just means that the rabbis taught us that because it's not so explicit in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
But here when he says divrei sofrim, he means really it's not deraita; it's derabanan. He's distinguishing it from deraita.
I think I would add to that is because the identity of the egg could be much worse than we think.
Of the egg?
Yeah. No?
Okay.
All right.
We're talking about an
I
udder
like
here.
that. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, it could be a treifa animal, but no. Let's assume it's the same animal. You shechted the animal, you cut up its meat, and one of the pieces of the meat that you threw in the pot was the udder, and that's only asher d'Rabbanan, because really there's no milk here really. But the rabbis forbid it. Why did the rabbis forbid it? I didn't really investigate that. Anybody have an idea? I mean, they forbid it. Maybe it just seems like basar b'chalav. It has a taste of basar b'chalav. It's similar to basar b'chalav. However you want to say it, I think that's the kind of idea. All right, let's go on. Lefichach. Max.
Where's the I have hakchal shekra'o. I don't have lefichach.
Oh, I have lefichach.
Okay, all right. Okay, lefichach hakchal shekra'o mirek hachalav shebo mutar letzeloso la'achlo. And therefore, if you take an udder and you tear it and empty the milk, then you can roast it and eat it. Maybe davka roast, but okay. The im karo shesi erev v'tachu bekosel ad shelo nishar bo.
Right, we're going to get into distinctions here. Mujel slow to. You can roast it on open fire.
Right.
That's if you did what?
That's if
you just ripped it and took out most of the milk. But if you did a higher level of processing, karo sheti be'erev, you didn't just karo. You cut it across many times and down many times. Vit tacho b'kota, and you pushed it against the wall. You really squeezed out all the milk.
Right. Then you can even cook it with water and meat.
With water and meat, exactly. With meat. Yeah. Notice he says cook it with meat.
Yeah.
There's a middle case, which is cooking it by itself, which is about to get into.
Right.
Here is cooking it with meat. With meat, you have to do that. Now go ahead.
Right. Ukchal shelo kra'o bein shel ktana shelo hinika bein shel gdola asur levashlo. But if you didn't do any tearing whatsoever, regardless of the size, no bishul.
No, not size. Katana means a youthful animal that never produced milk.
Right.
But it has an udder.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether it's a youthful animal with never produced milk or a mother that did produce milk. Either way, it's forbidden to cook it.
Yeah.
Because you didn't rip it at all. Go ahead.
Yeah. Ve'im avar ubishlo bifnei atzmo muter lachlo. Ve'im bishlo im basar acher misharino so b'shishim ukchal min haminyan. But if you went ahead and cooked it on its own anyway, it did bishul on its own anyway, you can eat it. But
because there was no other meat there in the pot.
Right.
If there had been meat there, it would be us.
Right there, and right. So then, if there's other meat, then you use shishim, and you can use the chal towards shishim.
Right, and that's our case. That last line is our case in the Gemara. That you im bisho im basar acher misharin oto b'shishim k'hal min haminyan, and it's a case of where you didn't do due diligence. You didn't cut it and remove all the milk. Says the Rambam. This is, by the way, a machloket in the halacha, in the Rishonim, whether you can cook it ever with meat. It sounds like the Rambam saying if you cut it sheti be'erev, you could cook it with meat, right? That's what he said. So, okay, that's the background. But Eitan, you were still reading. That's the background which we got, which is that the case, we define the case now. It's kachal that was not properly processed, and it's being cooked with meat. And we said then the kachal is counted because it's really heter. What does it mean it's really heter? From the Torah level, it's heter. All right, so the Tosfos. Eitan, actually, we'll give somebody else a chance. Maybe Noam, you want to read the Tosfot? Kachal min aminyan?
Sure.
I meant Noam. I meant Noam Korngold.
Oh, right. Deuteronomy, sorry.
Well, that would be you, not me. Sure thing. Okay. Ukachal min haminyan. V'im tomar kevan tekachal atzmo asur.
No, wait. I want you to.
Kedam.
For clarity's sake, I want you to read it every time it says asur mutar. I want you to add the word deraita derabanan as you see fit.
Oh, lovely. Sure. Let's do some higher order thinking. Great.
Yeah.
Ukachal min haminyan v'im tomar kevan tekachal atzmo asur midrabanan.
Yeah.
Kedamrina besamuch. Im kem nema chaticha atzma nase nevela libae shishim levad mikachal. So Tosfot asks, since we're saying that the kachal is forbidden, which we're going to see, just just ahead, we should say that the entire piece becomes like intrinsically prohibited. It becomes chanan, and therefore we should be we
And
should
wait,
need
it becomes Hanan midoraita or midorabanan.
well,
Obviously.
if it's derabanan, it's got to be derabanan.
Exactly.
You
Becomes
don't
Hanan
go up.
midorabanan.
Yeah, you don't go up.
You can't go
Right.
up. Exactly. So it's going to become Hanan midorabanan.
Right. So if that's the case, we should
Wait a
actually
second. Let's
require.
explain. Since we're just starting this, what is we talked? Let's mention. Let me just mention quickly what is Hanan. Hanan is that it's complex. Let's say very simply, it's that the piece is considered fully usher. It's not. We don't look at it by its constituent parts, but we say both parts. The whole thing is usher. So if we would say Hanan here, then the milk in the udder and the meat in the udder would all be usher. And if we had a different case of pork juice falling on a piece of brisket, then we would say the whole brisket is now usher. You need 60 against the whole brisket, not just against the original drop of pork juice. If you say Hanan and Shar Isur. If you say Hanan, I mean, Sephardim eat brisket too. Okay. Okay, so go ahead.
So if we're saying Hanan, it should require 60 excluding the
right.
Kachal.
V'yesh
lomar dehai asor lav mishum shia tam chalav bekachal yoter mishar basar.
Again, I want you to add the Rabbanan. I'm just for emphasis.
It has to be the Rabbanan.
Yeah, everything's Rabbanan. I'm just pointing out. I'm just trying to emphasize this because the question is going to be in my mind, can we learn anything about Hanan Deraita from this? Because it's all, or we have a concept, which is when the rabbis make a gezerah, on the one hand, when they make a gezerah, they make it according to the rules of the Deraita law. So even if it's Rabbanan, we might be able to learn out what the Deraita laws are because it works reflectively. In other words, if we see that in a Rabbanan din, it's certain it should be reflecting the Deraita. So then we can understand what the Deraita is. So on the one hand, there is a distinction. On the other hand, we could say no, it doesn't really matter because even though it's Rabbanan, still should follow the rubric of Deraita. I'm just arguing against myself that the distinction is not necessarily that significant. But just pointing out that we are talking about Isser D'Rabbanan. Just bear that in mind. The had the Asur D'Rabbanan.
Right. So right. So
La mishum sheyeh tam chalav.
Sorry, la mishum sheyeh tam chalav bekachal yoter b'shar basar, ela lefi sheyesh bo gumot v'hachalav kanus letocho v'yesh betocho chalav tam basar v'yefshar lafrisho min hakachal Me'achar shenit bashel to lo mehanya le kriya. Okay. So, and Tosfot answer that which is that the kol is prohibited not because there's a taste of milk in the udder more than it would be the case in any other milk, in any other meat.
In any other pieces, you might have thought that it's usher because the milk sort of
Really gets in there.
primarily
Yeah.
infected the kachal's the flesh of the kachal first, and then infected the other pieces of meat in the pot. Remember, there are other pieces of meat. But
He's
he says,
not
no, it's not
saying that.
because of that. We don't say that. We say that the milk spread fully evenly in throughout everything, and there's no more milk in any of the pieces of meat than any other pieces of meat. Now, it could be that's only, the question is, do we say that also to right? Because we have a Gemara of Tipat Chalav, which we'll learn in 3 weeks or something, where we also have a case of milk infecting meat, and maybe we say the first piece is infected more. But here we're not going to say that. And I'm suggesting maybe it's because it's Rabbanan, maybe because it's not really milk. But he's saying for sure the milk spreads evenly throughout all the pieces of meat. So why is the kahal aser? No.
Because of the holes, like the crevices within the udder, that the milk is embedded into it, and it's there where the milk gives a taste to the meat, and it's impossible to get rid of that from the udder, because once it's cooked, no amount of cutting is going to be effective.
Right. So right, exactly. So in other words, it's really the meat itself. If you could theoretically separate the meat from those little bubbles of milk in there, then it would be fine to eat the meat. But the bubbles of milk are usher because they got more, because they didn't spread out. They got stuck there. And therefore they got flavor from the meat. By the way, from which meat?
Of the kol.
Of the kachal?
Yeah, if we're already in Durabanan land,
According to
right?
the Rambam, we think about the Rambam that we learned. What did the Rambam say if you cook the kachal by itself?
You're fine.
So then are we worried about the flavor of the
Just
kachal?
assuming Rambam and Tosfot agree.
Yeah, let's assume that.
Then you're not worried about it.
So then what basar are we talking about?
The rest of the whatever you're cooking it
The
on.
other meat that was there. I'm just pointing out that you could, that I think that Tosas is going to say that in maybe the next Tosas. But I think they agree. I think that Rambam and Tosas agree. That's my inclination. So yeah, it's the other basar, is what I'm saying. It's the other basar that's infecting the milk. Why does that make sense? Because the kachal is essentially aser, I mean essentially mutter. We're not, if you cook it by itself, we're not going to create an isser on something that's essentially, it's only when you put something else in there, like meat, then we're worried about the meat and the milk. But when both parts are really mutter, the rabbis aren't going to go that far in aser. Okay, go on. Vim tomar.
Vim tomar uma tam hakachal asor valo kol hachalav hakanus letocho begumot niflat lachutz v'nikpashet v'niflat beshav l'chol hachaticho. Right. This is why you're saying
Bishaveh, bishaveh.
Bishavet l'chol hachaticho. Right. Kedamar de misharinan bechule. So he said. So the Tosfos is questioning, says, "What's the reason that the kachal is forbidden?" Well, it is it not the case that all of the milk that is sort of within those holes, within those cavities, is expunged outside and spreads out in equal part to all the other pieces of meat? As we
And that brings a proof. What's his proof? How do we know that all the milk
because
made
we
out?
measure it against all of it,
In other words,
right?
what is all of it? All of what?
All of the pieces, everything that's there.
No, not necessarily. No. Kule. I think it means, what else is the other possibility?
The kachal itself, right?
He's trying to
Those are
prove that all the milk went out. Because if all the milk didn't go out, then we wouldn't measure bekule. So what does kule refer to? You don't know? You don't see what I'm saying? The other Noam, what do you think?
Later, there's going to be a machloket in the Gemara bedide versus the nafakmine and
Right.
kule bedide.
Right. Okay, but I'm saying here though. I think what he's saying is, at least that's what I think that he's saying about the milk goes out everywhere. Because then the proof that the milk goes out everywhere is because we need to mevatel all the milk and not just some of the milk. So therefore, that must be that all the milk went out. Because if some of the milk stayed in place, then we would only need to mevatel half the milk or 3/4 of the milk. But since otherwise it's not a proof. Otherwise, it's not a proof of anything. The only way it's a proof is that, which it seems to be supposed to be, the niflat b'shabe the kol hachatichot kada'amar the misharin and bekule. So that it must have all gone out. So we're assuming it all went out, right? And then go on. He's going to, I think, another proof.
right.
He's just trying to prove that the reason that it's usher is not because the milk stayed locally in the meat,
Because it's spread out.
but rather it did spread out.
Farich nami ela ma'ata nafal lekatera acheret lo yasor mashma de pshita le shiyotze kulo kamo shefarash besamuch. So this is the second proof, right? If the kachal then falls into another pot, we're not saying that that extra other pot is going to be forbidden, which therefore implies that all the milk left.
Right. So therefore he's saying, so again, why is the thing usher? And now he says it's because really the milk spread evenly and it's butter. So go ahead. V'yesh laimar.
Yesh lamar lefi shemit chalat bishulo kodem shiatza hachalav legamre nesar hachalav shebekachal mipnei tam habasar shebo. So he answers that from the beginning of its cooking, before the milk actually fully went out, that milk forbade the udder because of the taste of meat that was in it. Ve'az lo haya yachol latzet b'kedera, and therefore
B'kriya.
Sorry, ve'az lo haya yachol latzet b'kriya. So then it's not able to go out through tearing.
Now, you might think I'll take the cacao out of the pot and then I'll cut it up and I'll push the milk out. The only
Problem
thing
is
that's
they've already
usher,
mixed together.
the
Right.
meat of the cacao is totally mutter. The only thing that's usher is the milk. So I'll just do kriya. He says, no, that won't work. Right.
Hilkach af lachar shenigmar bishulo shekvar yatsa kulo to lo lichere.
Oh, wait a second. Now he says, but wait a second. After you keep cooking it further, eventually all the milk really does go out. Because that's what we said. All the milk goes out. So why? So now there's no milk. So it all went out. So why is it still forbidden? And now he comes up with this other idea.
Right, still forbidden. De'efshar lesochato asor, because of the principle that 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 even if you're able to squeeze it out, it still becomes forbidden.
In other words, like this. This is it. How do you want it? Well, I'll ask you or ask the class. I'll open this to the class. What is this? How does this principle explain why the chaticha is still asur? And what is the principle? How does it explain that it's still asur? Yeah, Eitan.
I think the principle is that if you have a piece of meat and you have some isur on it, if you can squeeze out, like there's a debate over if you can squeeze out all of the isur from the meat, can you then eat that meat or not? And according to the position that it's asur, then it's an analogous case where you had this kachal that had some isur in it, and even though all of it left, it's as if you squeezed out all of the isur from something, and according to this position, that's still asur.
Right. But okay, great. But why is it asur? What's the principle that makes it? Why does this principle exist?
It sounds like it's a rabbanan because you just never really know if you really squeezed it all out, even if you
So
think
what
you
you're
can.
saying is the Rashba.
That's the Divrei Sofrim.
You're saying one opinion, Ori, that we don't know. Maybe it really didn't go out, but that's a little bit problematic because here we say even though it did go out, it's still usher, as though
No,
we
not if
do
you
know
say
it went out.
there's a rabbanan that we don't trust your own,
Okay, you could say that, but I want
as a
to. Does
matter
anyone have
of
it?
principle. Yeah.
Let's think in a different direction.
Isn't this Hanan at play to some extent?
It's kind of
No,
like Hanan. Yeah, it's kind of like Hanan.
But he's going out of his way to say it's not Hanan, I
No,
thought.
that's
Not
the beginning.
Hanan. It's not Hanan, but it's like Hanan. So what do we could have called this? Joel, what do you have an idea?
I think it had Shem Iser on it, and then what's
Exactly.
the Shem? But can we look at the Gilyon HaShas here?
Yeah,
This
okay,
is
but wait,
the-
first let me just explain what you just said.
Yeah.
The idea is that once it becomes usser, I'll say it in a funny way. It's like embarrassing to now say it's mutter. It's a kind of funny word to use, but I'm just saying, once it became usser, it sort of makes a mockery of our halacha that all of a sudden this piece that was yesterday was one moment forbidden, now all of a sudden becomes permitted. They're going to say the rabbis are just making things up. So we have a rule, shame isser nafal alav. Once it became called isser, it remains usser. That's the idea of. So even though the milk went out, it's still it went out 100% usser because shame isser. So now what did you want to see, Joel?
I want to see the Gilyon HaShas on this because he has the problem. I didn't get it as sharp as he gets it because he's Rabbi Akiva Eger, but he doesn't understand how this is Efshar L'Sochto, like Asur.
Right.
Because
Well, Eitan said it very nicely that it's analogous to, even though it's not exactly the same. I think that's the best answer. But let's see what.
Can I read it?
Yeah, go ahead. Where tell us.
Gilyon HaShas.
I see the Gilyon HaShas where it says Tosfot.
Yeah, he says Efshar L'Sochto Asur, right there, right? Yeah, Tosfot Dibor Machil Ukechal Mina Minyan Vechule Efshar L'Sochto Asur. He says Lo Zachiti Le'avin. I don't understand this. Habasar kechal lo nesar, rak hachalav kibel tam basar v'nesar, right? Hachalav v'hu begumot v'asur lechol hakechal mitzad she'ochel gam ken hachalav. He says, I understand. It's the chalav that gets the, and the Tosaf's been very clear about this. The chalav gets the flavor of basar in it, and it's the chalav that's asur, but it's stuck now in the kechal.
In other words,
right?
Tosfot is saying that the meat never became usher. You just couldn't have a way of eating it as long because there were bits of milk in it. But now, once the bits of milk got out, it never was usser and it became mutter. It was always mutter, but you couldn't eat it. Now you could eat it.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, go ahead. I have an.
Obviously, kechal mitzad she'ochel gam ken hachalav. Ve'achar gemar bishulo she'atzah chalav l'chutz mimele yeh mutar deha basar lo nesar klal. He says once all the
okay,
milk
so
goes
I'll give, I'm not that I'll give an answer. I'll give an answer. If you ask me a question, I got to give an answer.
Yeah.
I'll be his chavruta. And I'll answer and I'll say, because I don't care why the meat was usser. I don't care if the meat was usser because it essentially was usser or because you couldn't eat it because it had milk in it. It was still usser though. So if you'd ask, if the man down the street would ask me, is that mutter? I would say, no, it's usser. So that's called shame Israel. It is usser. For whatever reason it's usser, it is in the end usser.
Yeah,
I think I like that. I want to say that here in this whole conduct of the Tosfos, we don't say that it's Drabanan, it's they divrei sofrim. They treat it. They don't say let's be makel because it's Drabanan, and they don't say well we're more machmir because it's Drabanan. They treat it a full argument as if it's Jeraisa, and in doing so, certain things have created its own reality. We don't have too many other cut a piece and throw it against the wall. Where else do we have that? We don't have this notion of gumos, etc. So I think it's a It's a divrei sofrim, and as you just said very well. How can I bring that together with what you said? Yeah, it works with what you said. I mean, it just works out very well. So it's a shame isur, which is how the Achronim say it. It's a shame isur, but a shame isur seems to be like a real thing because it's such a strange critter, the cacao. It's so strange that it demands, or that it calls out its name. I'll leave it like that.
Thank you. No, I agree with everything you said there. That's great. All right, wait. Is there any more? We still have to tidy up this Tosfot.
Yeah, we're still in question. What? So that's according to the opinion
I
of
think that's
Efshar
so. We just said Efshar l'sochto aser, and therefore it's aser, even though all the milk did go out. Rafilu, go ahead.
Vafiu Laman Amar Efshar l'sochato mutar. So now you have to deal with the other side of the equation. Hacha gazrinan shema yochlenu kodem shiatza kulo. Right? So we still, even if you say Efshar l'sochato mutar, here there's a gezerah lest one eat it prior to the milk fully exiting.
Right. Now it's cooking in the boiling in the pot, and you didn't let it sit there long enough, and you grabbed a piece and you ate it. And now he's going to ask Kasha on
Of
himself.
course, if you're dealing with a derabanan here, you have a gezerah on the derabanan, which could be problematic unless you go with what Rav Landis just said. If you're treating it like a deoraita, you're going to treat it like a deoraita, and then you can place a gezerah on it.
Right. We throw it into the category. We treat it in every way like you would treat milk and meat, and regardless of whether there's the idea of a drabanan and a drabanan is not always. We don't never do that. The simplest answer is we don't never do that. And there's all kinds of theories about it, but I just say it like that. It's not really a ironclad rule. If it creeps up, it creeps up. Anyway, go on. Afalgav.
Afalgav de gabe bisra de asami. So even though with regard to the meat that became red from blood,
Right. Maybe it got hit or something. It got a certain redness in it, and therefore salt might not extract the blood.
Effective. Right. Sharinan kishaf pade b'shupuda, but we still there will permit it when it's on a spit. Levatar shenitzla lagamre, after it's fully cooked.
We let you eat that meat as long as you fully cook it on the spit.
Right. Velo gazrinan diama ate lamecha kodam gamar tzliato. And we don't say there that you're not allowed to eat it lest you eat it prior to finishing its roasting. So it's an answer, Shani Hatam, Shederech Hadam Latzet Ayadei Milicha, Utzliya. That it is the way, it's different in the case of the blood and the meat, because it's the way of blood to go out via salting and roasting. Lakach Soho Kidei Lotzi Damo. So therefore, when you roast it, it's so that the blood goes out. V'gamla levasof piresh kol adam legamre v'nofel lachutz. And once it's all done, all the blood's going to go out completely, and they're going to fall to the outside. Aval hacha kishyatsa nami kol hachalav mikol makom nisharhu b'kadeira. But in this case, even when the blood goes out, it's actually still in the pot.
The milk, right? The milk, when the milk goes out.
Sorry, the milk. Right, sorry.
When the milk goes out, it doesn't get burnt up.
It's still there.
It's still there.
Right. Ela shemit batel. Rather, we nullify it. V'ishar yelevasof ate lemichlena kodem. So therefore, if we permit it at the end, you might come to eat it before it happens.
All right. So you translated that perfectly. Now I open up to everybody. What's the svara? What he just said? Here we don't permit. Here we do permit because he described the cases. But what's the underlying unspoken thought behind all this? Why is it? I'll put it this way: why does the distinction matter? Fine, they're different. fine. One, the blood is there. One, the blood gets burned up, and one, the milk is there in the pot. You know them? Yeah.
There's a big psychological difference between like someone like their plan is not to eat any blood and they're not going to have to because it's going to get burnt up. But if you're just telling someone like, oh, you're either going to have milk in the chal or outside of the chal, there's not such a big difference between those things. So they're just going to rationalize and have it while it's in the chal, which would be a problem.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's well said. In other words, since we're letting you eat the milk, you're going to say, oh, you're just making me go through, you're just making me run through hoops. You're just making me do something. But you didn't actually, I don't see any concrete result of my actions. It's all, I cook the pot, I cook a little longer. It's all still there. When I'm salting, I can understand. It's like it appeals to my sensibility that I have to get all the blood out. But here, what am I doing? I'm just cooking a little more, a little less. So it's really the halacha is, according to Tosfos, being very responsive to the perception of people, right? How people perceive the significance of their actions. If they think it's a very significant action, they'll take it seriously. But if they think it's not really doing much, then they won't take it as seriously. We can't, right? So therefore we have to forbid it. We have to tell them no, it's just not permitted. So they take it seriously. Okay, so the rabbis were psychologists. All right, let's continue. So Tosfos is basically saying, I mean, what did we get out of this Tosfos? We conclusion is that the kachal is usher really for very subtle reasons, just because it has shem isser Allah, but really it's mutter. Interesting question would be if it fell into another pot, how far would this go? Because it's really mutter. It's just that because shem isser, how far are we going to go with that? And Rabbanan of shem isser, but apparently
didn't the Tosfos explicitly say if it falls in another pot, you're fine?
Fine. I think the opposite. Wait, show me. Or what you just read? I don't think so.
Yeah, I was saying.
Maybe.
Yeah. Ufarich nami ela me'ata nafal l'kadera acheret lo yasor.
No, but that's the Gemara asked.
Yes,
He's just quoting the
That's the
Gemara.
Got it.
Quoting the Gemara's questioning of this did. The fact that the Gemara could have that hava meaning to even ask that question implies that it thinks it all went out.
So like Dr. Frankenstein creating the monster, thought he can control it. But how much can we control this divrei sofrim?
Yeah. Okay, let's ask Max to read the next Tosfot. Kachal atzmo aser.
Okay. Ukla atzmo aser, yesh sfarim degarse asur heichodilo kare ubashle bahadi basar. So there are some versions that say that it's asur in a case when you didn't tear and then comma, and then you cooked it with other meat.
So you see here he's talking specifically about exactly like the Rambam. That's right. Like the gears of the Rambam. Right. When is it usher? That's why I was saying that this is kind of an agreement. At least he mentions it. It's usher when you cooked it with other meat and you didn't do kriya. That's the case. So I'm just defining. That's the case that we're talking about. As we had said, we learned from the Rambam, but you see it also here in the Tosfos. V'im tomar.
V'im tomar ki bashile nami lechude leitzar mishum tam basar hakal shebachalav shebagumos.
The Gimel says add the word atzmo.
Hakal atzmo. So maybe even if
shebachalav shebagumos.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the right. So maybe the entire, or even alone, the klal should be usher because of the meaty taste of the klal itself, which has mixed in with the milk.
of the kachal. This is exactly what I was saying before. I sort of preempted this Tosfot, but I mentioned this when we were learning previously that I said the Rambam, according to I said assume the Tosfos like the Rambam. So here's why I said that, because here he's assuming that the meat, when it's cooked by itself, the kachal, when it's cooked without meat, won't do the same thing. It won't usher the rest of the kachal. The milk in the kachal won't usher the meat in the kachal. Only other meat will do it. So why is that? So he answers.
Right. V'yishlomar mishum lishna kama derav beper kol basar. Zamar lo karu eno over alav umutter. Lakach tzarich lahamid kshenis bashal basar. So there's a complicated sugya in kol basar, but there's this first version in which Rav says that even if you didn't tear the kal, you weren't over alav, whatever, and it's mutter. And therefore, because of that lashon that says mutter, it needs to be talking about a case where the problematic case needs to be one where there's other pieces of meat.
Right. And why can't you just say that we don't go like that lishna? Why can't this Gemara doesn't go like that lishna? Why doesn't he want to do that? A simple answer. We don't like to create machloket when we don't have to. In other words, we could say that, but he's saying no. There's no reason to say that our sugya differs from, doesn't fit according to all the dayot over there. So to make it fit together, we'll have to say that we'll have to learn like the Rambam. Wait, Rav Isaac, you wanted to ask something?
I mean, it's just the sugya there. There's a comparison in some ways, between dam that is only asur in some degree once it is poresh from the meat, and chalav here with the. I think they're drawing an analogy to chalav with the kal that is not literally asur until it is poresh from the kal. And so there's a conceptual, I think, if it's not an exact analogy, but it's a conceptual analogy of things being asur once they're poresh from the meat.
Even though it won't really matter. It won't really matter in the case of the kachal. There's no real meaning to them because the kachal is all mutter anyway, really, on a direct. Right. Okay. So we've read. Okay, we finished that Tosfot. Yeah. So I'm just pointing out so that we got the halacha that our case, like we said before, is dealing with basar infecting the kachal. Let's go. Wait. Just wondering where we are now in the Gemara. We should finish the Gemara in the time we have left. Who would like to read now? Do I call on everybody? Maybe Caleb. Let's go back to
where are we at?
Amar Rav Nachman Gid b'shishim ve'en gid min minyan kachal b'shishim kachal min minyan beitza b'shishim ve'en beitza min minyan. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak from there.
Amar Rabbi Yitzchak re the Rav Misharsha de kachal atzmo asor inafal lekadera akeret asor. So Rabbi Yitzchak says that the kachal itself is forbidden, and that if it fell into a secondary pot, it would also be forbidden. It would make that secondary pot forbidden. Amar Rav Asi ki havinan be Rav Kana ibayr lan ki mesharinan b'diden mesharinan or the mai denafak mine mesharinan. So Rav Ashi was with Rav Kahuna, and it came before them that this case came before them, and they asked the question whether they should measure, when they measure, whether they should measure itself or by the amount of the milk that went out of the udder.
All right,
If that's
look at
what they're measuring.
Rashi. Bididei Misharinan.
V'didei misharinan debayinan sheyeh beheter shishim moto. That we require that there be a heter of 60 of its amount.
Against the whole size of the kakao. And then read the next Rashi. Oh, b'mai denafik mine.
Oh, b'mai denafik mine. Ein drichin sheyeh beheter ela b'shishim ma she'aplat zeh hai mine ta'ati kaman lav b'kedera hu the nishada shadinan le lavar. And we don't require that the heter only that the heter be 60 from what was emitted from the chachal. And what came out before is not in this secondary pot. And so we would throw that aside. We would not count the amount that was in the first pot against the second pot.
In other words, what is this? The logic of why we only measure what comes out is, in other words, how does that, what does that affect our case when it falls into a second pot? Because what went on to the first pot is no longer here. In other words, there's like we keep on reducing the amount of milk. Some of it went into the first pot, and what's in front of us now, what went into the other pot is no longer here. That's what I understood it. Yeah, I'm getting some nods. Okay, so go back to the Gemara.
Let's see. Pshita debe measuring. And it's obvious that the chachal itself is what we are measuring against. Di bama denafik mine mana yadenan. Because if it's about the measure that had come out of the chachal, how would we know that amount? I mean, we don't have that as an objective amount to compare it to.
No, that's right. We never would know what is that amount. So we're going to have to measure against the whole thing. Go ahead.
Nepal l'chadera aferet lo yasorim kevan that marav
Lo yasor, period.
And so from what we've just said, the if it fell into a secondary pot, the chachal would not cause that secondary pot to become forbidden.
Why? Because everything already went out. Everything went out into the first. If we measure against the whole thing, then it must be that we're holding that everything goes out. And Tosfos asks a question, well, maybe we just don't know. Maybe we have a suffix. We just aren't sure, so we're being machmir. He says, no, they knew. No. We're assuming that we know that all of it went out, and therefore we measure against all of it. And therefore we have this question. Now go ahead.
Kevan da'mar Rav Yitzchak b'rei Rav Mesharshe v'chachol atzmo asor should be Rabbanan ve'etikam denevela. So Rav Yitzchak says that the chachol itself is forbidden, and the rabbis equated it to a piece of nevela.
Right. This is actually the source, or a source, for the idea of Shev Isser Alav. In other words, since it's Usser, the Kakal itself is Usser, now the rabbis made it like it's a piece of, even though there's no Hanan here really, because like he said before, there's no real Hanan here, because the milk totally went out, but they still said it's forbidden because of the Gumot, even though the Gumot also went out, but it's still forbidden because it had gumot in it, and the rabbis consider it now totally like a piece of nevela. and therefore we treat it like that. And even though all the milk went out of it already, because remember, it's not a normal type of Isser. It's very different from a real Isser that hit something and maybe made Chana. This didn't really make Chana. Didn't create Isser, but the rabbis consider it Kechat Nevela. They gave it that name. Rashi says, here, read the Rashi, Kevan de Amar Kevan de Amar Rav Yitzchak v'chule.
כיוון דאמר רב יצחק וכולי, מפני שבהתחלה סרן עד שלא נצמק.
Since it was forbidden before it got small,
משנתנה הגדרה בו טעם מיד נאסר, and that it gave the Kedera a taste immediately that had been forbidden.
well, the Kedera gave it a taste. It is forbidden. Ume'az
שביבה רבנן פתיחת איסור שהיא לעולם איסורם, כדאמרינן במתניתין.
Zman shebekiro. Like it says in the Mishnah, Zman Mekiro Zorko. So you see that if you see it, he's actually learning it from the Mishnah. Rashi's saying the idea of Shem Yisar Alav is actually from the Mishnah, because we have to take the piece out once it became forbidden.
But this is like a punchline here. No, I mean, they dealt with the whole thing as if it's right. So even though we know we have a consciousness grab button, we take it as far as we can. We see the contradiction, and then I would just put Shavia. They equated it. They made that gezerah, which transformed it.
And there's no gezerah on a gezerah or anything. They made a blanket. They made a very strong gezerah that treat it in every way like basar b'challah.
Yeshkoyach.
Okay, baruchim to you.
Yes. You make an announcement, then I'll make an announcement.
Our next class is in 2 weeks, and we'll start from. We're going to skip some Gemara, and I'll send out where it is, but it's from the next. We're going to skip basically one Amud. I'll go to the bottom of the next page. Tzadi Amud Aleph. We're going to start from Amar Rav Chia Bar Ava, Amar Rav Yoshu Ben Levi, Mishum Bar Kapara, Kol Yisur B'Torah B'Shishim. Fine. We'll start from there tomorrow. I mean, in 2 weeks. I'll send out exactly where to end.
Sunday the 28th. Shir Klali. It's an opportunity for us that the whole group from our 2 different programs get together, and the material that I'll send to you, you can learn it in an hour. Learn it in an hour, so that I have willing participants, and I expect to see you all healthy and enjoying a gebenchte yor, a blessed year, which is partially totally if you show up to share prepared. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Yes, Shana Tova.
Wow.